Info Network. It is sponsored by the Cleveland Observer newspaper, and we're pleased about this relationship, and we're going to be bringing you some new exciting content as a result of that. Also, just wanted to make a quick announcement, and that is that there's going to be a stage production of Objectively Reasonable tonight at the Near West Theater. This is a play that is directed by Terrence Spivey, and it stars Phyllis Yvonne Stickney, who you may recall has been in quite a few movies, including How Stella Got Her Groove Back, New Jack City, and some other films. So you definitely want to check this out. So we have some other exciting information that we want to share with you, including a list of places where you'll be able to get food giveaways. So we're going to share that information with you later in the broadcast. As we progress, we'd like to introduce you to the creator and the founder of 360 Info Network. He goes by the name of Hamtonio, also known as Lynn Hampton. Brother Hamtonio.
Yes, greetings, everyone. Great to have you here with us. 360 Info is a place of discovery, and we like to take you on the journey of knowing who you are, what you are, and where you should be, and giving you news that you can use. We've been doing this for over 20 years now, guys, and we're just happy to keep continuing to do it and bringing you good information. And we got a great show for you today. I got a brother on. As soon as I met him, we just hooked up, linked up, and stayed in communication. He has a wealth of knowledge, and you're going to appreciate the show. So you might want to call somebody and tell them to tune in, because we're going to be talking about our health situation from a different approach with some ancient wisdom. My brother Vince, give us the rundown on our good brother.
All right, and I am happy to tell you that I've actually been one of his patients. His name is Dumisani Kambi-Shamba. He's a licensed acupuncturist and herbalist. He's maintained a private clinical practice for over 40 years with extensive experience in schools, clinics, hospitals, and outpatient facilities. He uses a wide array of diagnostic tools to help uncover the root causes of health concerns. His practice blends specialized Chinese medicine with functional global medicine in a unique and effective way. He's certified in clinical nutrition and homeopathy. His clinical focus is on longevity, healthy aging, and the treatment of chronic diseases. His therapeutic modalities include acupuncture with cupping, auricular microsystem therapy, gua sha, and electroacupuncture, Chinese herbal medicine. So without any further ado, we'd like to welcome to 360 Info Network, Brother Dumisani. How you doing today, bro?
Oh, I'm doing great.
Yes, sir, my brother. You know, back in the day when you used to come here, we used to call you Obama. You know that, right?
Yeah, I remember that.
Absolutely, brother. Well, it's a pleasure, brother. Really, it is. It's a pleasure to have you here, and for you to take the time out, because I know you have a busy schedule up in New York. I'm like, before we came on here, I talked about trying to get you here. I'm formulating something in my mind now and seeing how I can get you here, because I want the people to experience you, because just like Vince said, he was a patient. I was a patient as well. And, your treatments was just fantastic, and our people in Cleveland here really needs you, especially in this time and age and where we at right now, with dealing with health and medicine. Dumisani, we're going to start this off with something simple, and we're going to start up with acupuncture. When did it start? What it's about? And, and tell us about that Eastern philosophy of acupuncture.
So let's take a trip. This goes back to around 1500s, and in Europe, acupuncture was introduced into Europe around 1500s. Okay, and it was introduced into France, Germany, Italy, Spain, and it was brought back by what they call these Jesuit priests, who went to the Far East. And the Jesuit priests, they are representatives of the Catholic Church. And so part of the Jesuit priests are like the frontline warriors of the Catholic Church. They go to these places, learn the culture and the language, and they bring it back to the Roman Catholic Church so that they can, make inroads into those various areas in the world. So acupuncture was introduced into Europe long ago, and but the issue with acupuncture at that point, there was no translations into the language in terms of the philosophical texts that's involved with Chinese medicine. So that was one of the drawbacks, because they wanted to at that time there was this push around 1500. This dude by the name of Rene Descartes. You probably heard of him. He's the father of modern scientific thought and medicine, right? He was the guy that talked about he was a scientist, a mathematician, and also a philosopher. And so he was the one who set up what they call the rational thinking process. And at that time, since they didn't have the texts and the philosophical understanding of Chinese medicine, it didn't catch. But there were a few people who were practicing acupuncture, but it didn't really catch. So what happened was that got so it really never took hold completely. And so what happened was it kind of waxed and waned, and they would have these events and so forth, and people would present Chinese medicine, the herbs and acupuncture, but it was small in terms of its following. So in the 1800s, around 1820, 1830s, there was a big upsurge of Chinese medicine in Europe again. But at that time, there still wasn't the translations of texts that was able to, translate Eastern and Western medicine. And at that time, Western medicine was in its infancy, so it didn't catch. And then around 1920, in the English-speaking world, was this British person by the name of Felix Moran, and he was the one that brought in Chinese medicine into Britain, and he wrote the first text on Chinese medicine and acupuncture. And then around the 70s, there was another big introduction of acupuncture and Chinese medicine in the West, specifically in the United States. But it was in, the European countries and Canada, it was flowing. Now, in the United States, as long as the Chinese have been here, they have been practicing acupuncture and Chinese medicine. It was, of course, not something that was being regulated by the state, and it was only in the Chinese community they was passing around, their knowledge and their philosophy, which is, Taoist and Confucius philosophy. So that was in the Chinatowns of America, and the Chinese came into America around 1850s or around 1820s, 1830s. They were brought in from Shanghai, and they were building the railroads and so forth and so on. And they brought it in those Chinatowns. They were practicing acupuncture and Chinese medicine. So it's been in America a long time, but it's sort of ignored by the power structure in the medical system. So around 1970, Nixon went to China, and one of the journalists that was with him suffered from he had a gallbladder disease, and they gave him surgery without anesthesia. And it just blew up in the news after that. And so it became quite a sensation. And so, I mean, everybody in the world was doing it, but Americans weren't. And so the outside of the Chinese American community. And so that was something that was now brought into our communities. I learned Chinese medicine by it was a brother who was part of the Black Panthers, and he had an office in he had a barbershop in Harlem that he used to treat people. And
wow. Okay.
And his partner was Matulu Shakur, who was the godfather of Tupac. So him and the brother named Brother Delaney, they had a barbershop that they were treating out of in Harlem. And so what happened was they had been trained in Canada because there was no training in the United States, no formal training. So they got formal training, and then through contacts, I got a chance to meet with these brothers and get involved in acupuncture. And they were using it more for, like battlefield medicine, so when, and also to heal the community, the Black Panthers. And Matula was associated with the Black Liberation Army. So it was that history. I wasn't involved in the Black Liberation Army. My sentiments were there. Also the Black Panthers. I came up through that time when that was very present in my life. So I was always very, political and activist, but looking at ways that we can save ourselves as a community, because one of the most riveting images I have of how we're fighting against the system, and then Huey Newton gets shot and they put him on a gurney and lock him down with handcuffs and wheel him into the hospital and out there in Oakland. And I'm just like saying, oh, that can't happen. I mean, how are you going to be fighting someone and you're going to go to them to ask for, for healing. Okay. But part of that was fueled also by the fact that I had been in Vietnam, and I came back from Vietnam, and I understood that for every guerrilla, because, Vietnam, they were fighting a guerrilla war, meaning that they were fighting, the South Vietnamese were fighting for the liberation of their country to get the French and Americans out. And so their idea was that for every person they put out on the field, they had to have 7 people behind them in a guerrilla war. So the asymmetric aspect of the guerrilla war was to defeat the enemy by doing a lot of, small tactical hurts. So the enemy, you can't confront them directly because they were too big and too powerful, but you could, nip at their heels and cripple them so much that they would give up, right? And unfortunately, the Vietnamese had been at war with China for about 1,000 years. So those guys were born in war. They had been at war for a long time. So after that experience, when I came back to the States, I realized that we needed to have a way to approach healing if we wanted to talk about, saving ourselves. And it couldn't be based on Western medicine only, because Western medicine wasn't taking care of us the way it should. And so I began to look at that and make some decisions about my life. And, met people who were doing things like, Dick Gregory, who was, his first book was Eating Like the Sunshine, or Eating the Sun, but it was a raw food cookbook back in 74, 75, he wrote. Okay. And so I was part of a collective in Atlanta, and we had a vegan raw food restaurant back in 77, 76, 78, 79. It was way before everybody else was doing it. And we had we also had a co-op, and we had a bookstore, black bookstore. So we were way ahead of the curve in terms of that. There were a few places in the country where things were happening. There was the Liberation Books in New York, and then it was Hurul Kataba Books in Philadelphia, and then there was a bookstore down in DC. And then there was Marcus Books out in San Francisco and Oakland. And I was involved in all of that over the years. And I started to realize that if we didn't take back our health, we was going to end up in with a lot of issues.
Yeah. And go ahead. You got something else? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk all day about the history.
Yeah, okay.
How we went. I mean, you talk about history. There's a lot of history that we have. It hasn't been publicized, or a lot of people don't know about. And there was a big push among a lot of Black people who went into Chinese medicine with that activist mindset and doing acupuncture and things like that. And many of them had died out. Like Matula was also an acupuncturist, and so many people have died out. I had the opportunity to go and study in Africa, and I was part of the ANC, my family in South Africa. And so I met this Chinese, Taiwanese doctor his name was Dr. Chang, who became my teacher there. And I also was a student of a traditional healer. They call him Nyanga, and Nyanga means it's the same name that they give for the moon. There's two types of healers in Southern Africa: there's a male and females. Females are called Sangomas, and the males are called Nyangas. So I studied with an Nyanga, and I introduced the Nyanga to my Chinese teacher. And so they were like working together, and it was enlightening. So when I got back to the States from that experience, I saw that the only way we can heal ourselves is we need to really focus on a culture of health. Be something that was, part of your daily lingua franca, so to speak, right? So you couldn't be outside. It couldn't be something separate from the way you live. It had to be something a part of the way you live. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So when it go ahead, but so when it some still might have a question. So how does it work? What's the philosophy with the meridians or whatever? What is the philosophy on how, by dealing with some needles, how it's going to help my organs?
Okay, so let's take a step back. Now the word for qi, you heard that word qi. They associate that with Chinese medicine. It's spelled Qi, but it's pronounced Chee, right? So qi. So that's the main substance that they are dealing with in Chinese medicine, and this idea qi. Now, when you break open the word or the character, Chinese, they're writing pictures, right? Characters, hieroglyphs, right? So the hieroglyph for qi is a fire with wood on it, in a pot with water, and rice in the pot. And the steam that's coming off of the pot is what they call the qi. So it's something that you can see is warm, active, and it moves. It's got and so that's how they see the body. They see the body as full of this energy. You can't see it, right? You can't see qi, but you can see the effects of qi. Okay. Now, this force, we call it energy. It's how we think in terms of that. It's more than just energy. It's got a lot of other properties to it. But this qi is what defines their medicine. So their entire system is based on, just like the entire Western medicine is based on chemistry, right? Biochemistry. Well, their whole medicine is based on this concept called qi. And they have spent thousands of years looking at how this qi operates inside your body. So they came away with this idea of qi being an energetic phenomena. Then it flows in the body, and they were able to map out the flow of energy in these channels and then relate those channels to organs.
I see.
Okay. So they had the physiology, and the anatomy was different than the Western idea. Now, of course, this is long before the West even thought of these things in a very coherent way. So the only other cultures that I can reference to this, it would be something like the Kemetic culture, right? They have a very similar approach to the way they looked at, things like the heart and the liver and things like this. They even, the way they talk about, you've seen these pictures of weighing of the heart, right? With the feather kind of thing, right? And ancient right? So the heart and it carries your consciousness, right? So what they're weighing is not a physical heart, they're weighing your life in terms of the spiritual energies of it, right? So the focus of the energy of your life resides in your heart. So they weigh that. So in Chinese medicine, the similarity is that the heart, when they look at the heart, they say the heart has two aspects. It has a physical aspect, but then it has a spiritual aspect. And that spiritual aspect governs all the other organs in terms of the spiritual aspects. And what they have found in Chinese medicine, at the core of their medicine, is that the negative emotions and negative thoughts, it is brought on by the imbalance of the spirit. So they have 5 different types of spirits that they talk, you know, they call it minds or spirits. So so for example, if the spirit of the liver is imbalanced, then you would have the emotions of being angry, you know, shout a lot, and all of that. Okay, hold on a second.
Yeah, I'm glad he brought up the point about the relationship between Chinese medicine and Kemet, because I was just wondering about how those two things might be connected. You know, when we look at the history of civilization, we find that Africans were all over the planet, and there are some conversations about the fact that the early Chinese were actually Africans. So I'm just wondering, you brought up that connection, and I'm sure you would like to comment about that.
Okay, so I mean, is there any doubt that the whole planet is Africans?
Yeah, I don't know why we still having those debates on
okay,
that.
So
you know?
I mean, so my question is, let's look at Africa. Africa has, you know, for survival, any place where you have survival and you want to survive, you got to have diversity. You understand? Because humans, if you lack survival, your possibilities of living or surviving, diversity is not there. If it's only 2 in terms of diversity, if one falls down, the other one potentially could fall down, and the races or the human race is gone. So now what has happened in Africa over the many millions of years, that all these different diversities start to happen. So Africa has the most diverse population in the world. So when they go and look at the DNA of Africa, they see more diversity there than anywhere else in the world. Mm-hmm. So with various different groups in Africa that out-migrated, went to different places in the world. Okay. And, you know, when you go to a geographical location, they have this concept of evolutionary biology, where your body, based on the geographical location, it takes on, for optimization of life, you get a certain look, right? So if if you're going to optimize in a desert, right, like the Kalahari Bushmen, they got almost like Asian eyes. Right, you seen those people, right?
Yeah,
so they look their skin is dark and their hair is just curly, but you can put them in China. They're little thin people, just like the Chinese, right? So you can see that relationship, that there must have been that strain of people who went out into that area, because China has a lot of deserts, and those people, you know, the eye is shaped to withstand the glare of the desert and snow. Right, that's why the eye is shaped that way, right? It is, you know, so you can see that came from maybe that area of Africa, and then you have other parts that went into, you know, to north, all the way into the north part of the earth, and then when these ice ages came, they tend to move back into warmer environments. Of course, in those movements, some people get stuck behind those glaciers, and they couldn't get out to these warmer environments. So the body chose optimization. If you can't get sunlight and it's cold, what you're going to do? You're going to lighten your skin up. You're going to make your hair more like wool. I mean, more like something to keep you warm. So the hair lays down, it goes flat. You know, your eyes, you don't have enough melanin, so you gotta, you're not getting enough sunlight, so you got to optimize your eyes so it can receive whatever melanin it can. So the lighter the eyes are, the more melanin you can get into your body, in your skin. So these are just adaptation responses to evolutionary things that goes on. And then we get caught up in the idea of different colors and different races. It's only a human race. But because we isolated and we lived in these silos for so long, now we can talk to each other. We haven't recognized our relationships to each other. Okay. So, you know, that's one thing. So when we start talking about Africa, we see the first real civilization that came into existence in Africa, and it stayed in existence for about 10,000 years before, you know, the advent of the Christian era, right? So there's about 10,000 years, and that civilization is what the foundational civilization came out of Africa, and it blew up into Ethiopia, Sudan, and present-day Sudan, and present-day Egypt. But the people that originally brought that in were not the people that is there now. Okay. So, and then, you know, I have a timeline that I refer to often. It's a timeline that has to do with too bad I can't present. Maybe next time I'll present
you
it.
can present.
Let me see if I can find this thing. If I can find this thing, let me see if I can find this thing. If I can find this, I'll present this timeline so you guys can see it. And
well, what we might do too, then, we're coming up on our break, and you know, I want to kind of get back to, for some of the, you know, novice listeners who may really don't, and maybe still asking the question about how does it work. I know you was just about to get into dealing with the energy of the organs and how that would help them. You know, maybe we can get into it a little bit when we come back after the break, and then you have your be able to present something at that particular time.
Well, I got it now. If you want to see it, I can present it right now if you want it.
Well, we do have to move towards that break, and what I would suggest is that perhaps we do that in the second half of the show, because we have listeners who are listening on the radio. They're listening on AM 1490 WERE.
Oh yeah,
but they can't see what you're presenting. So
right.
I have to be a bit more verbal about how.
And perhaps it could be a gentle nudge to them to join us online. You know, we're broadcasting live on 2 different YouTube channels and a couple of Facebook channels, and we're also on LinkedIn. So this is just a subtle reminder that you can check us out online. You have The Journey with Antonio, that's his YouTube channel. You also have my YouTube channel, which is Vince Robinson, and we invite you to join us so you can see. You can also get involved in our program. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat, or if you have comments that you want to make. You know, this is a live show, and we really welcome your participation as we move down this information highway that is 360 Info Network. So with that, I will remind you that you are listening to 360 Info Network right here on AM 1490 WERE. Our guest is Dumisani Kambi-Shamba. He is an acupuncturist and herbalist joining us from New York City, New York, and he's got a great wealth of information to share with us. So join us in the second hour, right after noon. We're going to pull up that presentation, and you'll have the opportunity to present some visual information to you as well. With that, we are going to move to, as Brother Antonio said, our first break, and it comes to you courtesy of the Cleveland Observer. So we'll be right back right after this.
Cleveland has stories worth telling and voices that deserve to be heard. That's why the Cleveland Observer is proud to sponsor 360 Info Network with Vince Robinson and Antonio on AM 1490 WERE, where truth, culture, and conversation come together. Each week, host Vince Robinson and Antonio open the door to powerful discussions, from the arts and community history to the issues shaping our neighborhoods today. And the Cleveland Observer is right there with them, shining a light on the people and movements building a stronger Cleveland. Tune in to 360 Info Network and visit CLEobserver.com to read, watch, and share more stories that inform, inspire, and unite our community. Because together, we are Cleveland's voice.
All right. We'd like to welcome you back to 360 Info Network. And as we said, we have this beautiful collaboration with the Cleveland Observer. And we welcome you to check them out online. You know, they have an online version, and they also have a print version. So as you're out and about in the community, you can check out the Cleveland Observer newspaper. We're going to get back into the program and welcome back our brother Dumisani Kambi-Shamba, who is practicing acupuncture and herbalism right there in New York City. I think there was some conversation before the show about perhaps welcoming him back to Cleveland. So I think our brother Antonio is going to get busy working on that as well. So let's continue with the show. We're going to take this slide down in just a few moments, but we will continue with the show. So brother Antonio, if you'd like to address the question, and I'll figure this out.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. You know, again, as far as the listener is concerned, because I know most of us, you know, through movies or whatever, have heard about acupuncture, but really don't know how it works, because that seems very strange to some people. How poking some needles in my body and my skin is going to help with some other parts of my organs. See, but from my understanding, that whole Eastern philosophy, that whole approach, this is like what you say, is dealing with chi energy. And here on 360 Info, we always talk about energy, being everything is about energy, vibration, frequencies, and things like that. So if you think in terms like that, you can understand the philosophy on how and why it may be able to help you as far as in restoring your health to some type of homeostasis type of level. So with that, brother Dumisani, how does that energy and those needs, when you talk about meridians or mediums, how does that happen? How does that work?
Okay, so here's the core of it. So this chi which is very warm and active and yang, it moves through these channels, and the movement of the chi through the channels covers the entire surface of the body. Now, in the West, they were trying to figure out, are these nerves, are these blood vessels, or what is it, right? So they went, trying to see, some physical substance or some physical matter that they can actually identify, but they had never been able to identify these channels in terms of looking at them. So what they were able to do was to test the electricity that at certain points and on that channel, and go through those points by points by points by points, and check it and see that there is something that is flowing through those points. Then the spaces between the points, when they check for the see if it's the same, is not the same. So those points do carry an electrical charge that they can detect.
Okay.
So that was a game changer. And so people began to realize, okay, this is real. This is real. Now they can't see the channels. And you asked me how the Chinese came up with this. And maybe they inherited this from somebody or some culture, or they came up with this on their own. Likewise, in India, they have a same kind of idea. They have these, what they call marmar points. Marmar, it's M-A-R-M-A. These points, they're not the same as acupuncture points, but they can be used to heal. And they have a system of channels and chakras, which is Indian, this Indian idea of these vortexes in the body that generate energy. So when we go to the East, we can see that there's this energetic medicine thing going on over there. And we can see in ancient Kemet, like we were talking about before, the same kind of idea of energetics was there as well. And it's still throughout Africa. It's very much part of the African ideas of, health and medicine. So they use the spirit energy. Like the spirit is like, you know, we have this word for spirit, and we get crazy with it. We talk, is there something in the sky and things like that. But in the Chinese system, they have a very simple way of, determining, the amount of chi that one has. So you could place your hands together and pull them apart slightly and close your eyes and just relax your breath. And in that stillness, you can feel a sensation in the palms of your hands. And that sensation will feel like when you try to put two magnets together, you get the repulsion.
Mm-hmm.
You'll get that sensation. Or when you try to pull the hands apart, you'll get that sensation of like magnets that you can't pull apart. And that will determine, that this is a real experience that you're having with chi. And what they do with, you heard of qigong before, or if you're not, Tai Chi, right? They're using the hands, right? You notice, right? The hands. So the reason why they're using the hands is they want to generate this chi and either gather it from around them,
okay, and
then bring it back into their bodies, or they want to push it out and heal people with it, right? So with their hands, they've been able to do this. Now the Japanese took this to another level, and so they call it Reiki. You'll see Reiki.
Oh, okay,
right?
Okay.
So, but Reiki, Japanese medicine is Chinese medicine in a different form.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So,
they took Chinese medicine and made it theirs, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't even call it Chinese medicine. They call it Kempo medicine. Okay. It's Chinese medicine. And in the Tibetans, the same thing. The Koreans, the same thing. The Vietnamese, the same thing. The Laos, Cambodia, all in the Southeast Asia. Philippines, they do acupuncture. They might give different names to it. It's just like, for example, you had Buddhism that developed in India, then it went to Nepal, and then it went to Tibet, and then it went to China, and then it went to Japan and Korea, right? So in Japan, you got Zen Buddhism, okay, Zen Buddhism, right? The practice is pretty much the same, but it's different from the Buddhism that was created in India. Okay, so these people use the same philosophical systems all throughout the East, in the Far East, and that is another whole world of energy, healing, philosophy that we in the West and many Black people haven't been exposed. So we've just been exposed to just one type of medicine, one type of healing. Black people still love herbs. I mean, wherever you go, they want the natural things. They want the herbs, and we take vitamin supplements, which is a halfway step between herb and Western medicine, because they take the essential ingredient and give you that, right? They give you like a vitamin or mineral or amino acid. And I say to people that those things they're helpful. I take them, but I take them with natural foods. I don't just take them by themselves. You got to take it with foods. The foods there's a synergistic action between the vitamins and minerals and food, because that's what you're trying to get when you eat food. So people take vitamins, and if they're not eating with the vitamins, then the effects is going to be minimal. So anyway, back to the idea of this system of medicine that was developed in the East, that is now proliferated all over the world, and everybody's using it in every country. There's philosophically, the West are not able to accept it. They use acupuncture for pain. So if you have pain, you go see an acupuncturist, they will relieve the pain, but the theory behind it, they reject. I worked at this doctor's building. I was there for 20 years. It's a commercial doctor's building across from a major hospital. And it was a bone and joint hospital. So they have in the building, they had offices next to me. And so this guy comes with his shoulder all wrapped up, and the doctor, so I told him, I said, "Hey man," I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Oh man, my shoulder, I got to just play shoulder and table, tennis and all this kind of stuff." I said, "Acupuncture can work." He said, "I don't believe in that." Okay. Mm-hmm. That's his words straight up. He didn't say, I know about it, or I don't believe in that. So, in other words, this is a man of science is saying to me, his belief system is running his mind or running his philosophy. I mean, if you're a scientist, you're open to these things. You research, you look at them. You say, well, if there's any efficacy in this thing, I'll use it. If not, I won't. But he made up his mind beforehand that he didn't want to have anything to do with Chinese acupuncture or Chinese things. Because to him, it wasn't, quote, like Descartes say, rational, right? So the whole thing is like it's too different than Western idea of medicine, you know. So we got this thing in Western medicine. One of the things that we have is that Western medicine is all about the materialistic approach to health. Okay, they make little inroads to it, and they say, "Oh, if you meditate, you know, you get better. You know, you could do some meditation, you get better, right?" But they don't really understand the mechanism completely. They have gotten to the point where they understand that there's some hormonal responses in the body to meditation, and the hormones are like the master, you know, glands and secretions in the body that make big things happen. And so when you meditate, you can decrease the cortisol levels in the body, okay, increase the serotonin levels in the body, right? It helps with normalize insulin, you know, uptake in the body. So all these things happen when you meditate, right? So it brings you back, as you said, Antonio, back to homeostasis, right? Brings you back into balance. So yeah, they know that these things they work, but the theory that the Chinese give them, they ignore because it's to them, it does not fit their model of rational science.
Right.
So, and it's the arrogance of them to say that they're the only ones that can make science. Okay, so this gets crazy. So if I was in China doing Western medicine, I wouldn't call it English medicine or German medicine, but the West have made sure that when you talk about Qi, you're talking about Chinese medicine, right? Regardless of what country you're in, you could be in Korea, you could be in United States, you could be in Spain. Where it's Chinese medicine. It's Chinese medicine. Okay, the Chinese kind of like it because it's, you know, oh, give us a little big up. Okay? But if you walked around the world and said, oh, this is English medicine, this is English medicine, I mean, people are like, well, what? No, what is this? So in the West, they adopt the term biomedicine. Okay, and in Asia, I mean, one of the things that I talk about is that is Qi medicine, right? Of course, it comes from. I give honor to the Chinese for keeping this thing alive and spreading it throughout the world. It came from there, but the real root of this medicine it deals with this idea of Qi. So, how does it help sticking needles in your body? That's your question. And people think that the needles hurt. Number one, because any needle that you put in your body or you get stuck with a pin, it's going to hurt, right? You get your ear pierced, oh, it's going to hurt, right? They got to numb the ear first and then put something and they put it in. If you get cut in surgery, they got to numb it and then open you up. If you get some teeth or dental work, they got to numb the gums and all nerves and all of that, right? So that's what we think about in the West. In Chinese medicine, the needles are hair thin. They're so thin that you can just like I'll show you for those people who can see, and I'll describe this to folks. In my hand, I have an acupuncture needle. Right, this is you probably can't even see it. It's very small.
Yeah,
okay?
I see.
Okay, now this is smaller than human hair. The not the
handle part of the
handle, but the body of it. Now this needle, I can just slightly touch it and it'll bend.
Oh, okay, I see that. Yeah,
you see that, right? You see how easy, how flexible it is, right?
Yes.
And now on the tip, you can't see the tip, but on the tip, there is a on the tip. Let me see if I can get it. So on the tip, there's no serrated edges. So when it pushes it through the skin, there's no pain going into the skin. So regular needles are fat and they have serrated edges. And so when you put the needle into the skin, you're going to get that tear of the tissue. But with acupuncture needles, you don't get the tear of the tissue. Okay? So now when these needles go into the body, what they do is they stimulate the point. And that stimulation stimulates the chi in either direction. If it's too much chi, right? If it's too much, then what it does, it reduces the amount of chi flowing in the body. Or if it's too little, it tonifies and increases the chi. And certain diseases have, and the reason why diseases respond to this, because diseases either have an excess or deficiency.
Okay.
And so what you're dealing with is you're removing either the excess or you increasing the deficiency. Remove the deficiency. However, in Chinese medicine, all illnesses come from emotions.
That's their belief system.
It's not their belief system, it's the system of their philosophy that have shown to work, in fact, for 4,000 or 5,000 years.
Wow.
So it's not a belief system, it's a science. Of course, there's got to be some buy-in to the idea of chi. Okay. If you don't buy into the idea of chi, then you won't be able to explain how this thing works. Okay. Just like in biomedicine, you got to buy into the whole idea of atoms and then photons and neutrons and protons and how they connect together. You got valent and covalent bonds of molecules which go to make different types of chemistry and molecules and stuff like that. So the Western medicine is it's real, it works, but in this world we're talking about using needles to stimulate the chi.
But see, one thing I wanted to throw in, I want our listeners to catch before we go off terrestrial radio, is you see these days, and I'm sure all of us, as far as the internet and things is concerned, we hear him talking about, you're seeing all these new approaches to wellness coming up, and people talking about this herb and that herb and this technique, and you hear him always say it's been used for 1,000 years, and so that brings some type of a curiosity, I would say, and maybe some validity to some people about why we keep talking about this practice or this thing was used, or this type of herb has been used by the Chinese for 1,000 years to give the man back testosterone, or to do this or to do that. That seems to me brings some of the validity that maybe we need to incorporate more of this type of medicine into our daily lives, or we got the wrong approach over here in America.
Well, you don't have the wrong approach. I mean, the idea is like Cleveland Clinic they got an alternative medicine clinic there. There was a sister that was running that. They had acupuncture and Chinese herbs. I went and visited that clinic when I used to go out there. It was Cleveland Clinic, one of the premier institutions in the world, right? And they had a holistic clinic where they was doing acupuncture and Chinese medicine, and so they know that it exists and it works. But that was on the cutting edge, and with the money you can get these things, and so they made it very exclusive to certain communities, and you weren't able to get it. So our thing is to get this out into the community. And that brings me to what I'm doing now. Currently, I'm in my 3rd year of a project where I'm teaching people Chinese medicine. I give them a year, 3 semesters, and about 6 to 7 hours a week. I split it into 2 classes, and they get the entire Chinese medicine course that I did over 3 years at an institution, which was just to drain some money out of my pockets. Which the institution, it was to do the course, and the work that I did was acupuncture and Chinese medicine, right? and it was a really a 3-year course, and it cost over $100,000. So this is how they position the medicine. So most people in our community can't see $100,000. They can't see that. That's a mortgage. Okay, that's a lot of money. So and then there's no guarantee when you finish that you'll be able to pay these loans back that you get to go through these schools, right? It's like medical school without state support. And so most of the acupuncture schools and Chinese medicine schools since COVID have closed down. So I think there was about I think somewhere in 50, 60 schools. Now they're down to I think 13 schools in America. And so and they're not servicing, the communities that really need it. That's the poor folks. Okay. Our communities, you got to remember these people, they were in a time in history when the food was relatively clean. It was holistic. It was organic. They didn't have chemicals in their food. Okay. Right. And so in the herbs, they didn't live in a chemicalized environment. And so their world was completely different. So,
but you know what, Dumisani, but I'm thinking too that some of the slow response that we've been getting, about acupuncture and Ayurvedic medicine and the whole gambit of it is due to this country, and Wayne Chandler said it best, that they're left-sided thinkers. They departmentalize and they tend not to put a holistic approach to whatever they're doing. It seems like they departmentalized and they don't see that whole approach. And that's what I think that maybe they weren't able to conceptualize that chi, the whole formation of chi, and what was it about, and knowing that energy is there. So I think that's some of the problem.
So yes, that's when I go back to Descartes, where they separate the material from the non-material. So the materialistic world, the rational world was materialistic, and the immaterial world was non-rational. You understand? Yes. So once they made that separation, then anything that didn't fit their ideal rationality or science was just discarded. So in Asia and in Africa, we didn't do that. We didn't separate the material from the immaterial. They were all part of the same, thing.
That's the thing. Yes.
And so when we come to something, we're looking at it from these different perspectives. And so we didn't say this is in terms of, like, for example, in Western medicine, they'll do a thing like, we're going to do a double-blind or triple-blind a test on the substance that I'm going to use to see how effective this is against, say, for example, hypertension. So they do the clinical trials. They write it up and say, okay, now the patient is over there, and Vince is the guy who created the formulation. He formulates it and he gives it to you, Antonio, and then you give it to me. Now you don't know what you're getting from him because he gives you what do you call it? A placebo, right? They give you that and the herb. You get the batch. He knows what's what. You give me the batch, and then I pass it on to the patients. Now he's recording what's happening with these patients. They do this double blind to prevent the spirit from interacting with the patient. So if the patient knows that Vince is giving them herb that's going to do such and such, then that skews the clinical trials. So to keep the trials clean, as they say, they want to prevent that spiritual aspect or the non-material aspect from entering into the clinical trials to make sure that this is effective and it's going to work.
Okay. We're kind of winding down on the terrestrial broadcast, but you mentioned you have these classes, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to let the public know how they can reach out to you and how they can take advantage of those classes as well as the services that you provide.
Okay. Can I share the screen with you just a minute here?
Just for a second, because we just have just a few moments.
All right. And maybe the next time. So anyway, the screen that was going to show you around 1500 BC, there was a glacial period, and all the people from the north ran down into Egypt, and that's how Egypt became light. Anyway, That was in response to the question I had with Antonio.
We'll do that on the other side of noon.
Okay.
So how can folks get to you if they're interested in taking your class or perhaps obtaining your services?
Okay. My phone number is 917-935-9050. And you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all of them out there. You just type in my name, you'll see it. Dumisani, Kambi-Shamba. And my email address is Dumisani, that's DUMISANIS @gmail.com. And for those who are interested in the Chinese medicine class, it's an online class at liferx.us.
You still got that?
LifeRx. Oh yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we, on behalf of the radio listening audience, we'd like to thank you for joining us, and we look forward to the conversation that will happen on the other side of noon. And we will happily show your visual information because we know that it will be impactful. Just a couple of announcements before we wind down. First of all, visit our YouTube channels, the Journey with Hamtonio and also Vince Robinson. When you get to these channels, like, comment, and subscribe. It will be very beneficial to us and to you as we continue to provide you with content. Also want to let you know that I'm going to be including in the description of this video on YouTube various locations where they're going to be giving food away within the next month or so. There's actually one that just ended at the Word Church, but there are several locations where you'll be able to get free food. And this is, you know, in relationship to the SNAP benefits being cut and folks not being able to obtain the food that they normally get from the government. That's a rabbit hole that perhaps we can talk about on the other side of the show. Also, just want to let you know, if you're interested in a sponsorship on 360 Info Network, you can reach out to us. We'd be happy to share information about your business or entity. We're working to get more sponsors for this show so that we can increase the value of the show to you. And one last moment, I just want to let you know about Objectively Reasonable at the Near West Theater this evening. It's going to take place at 6:45, and you will be in for a real treat as you watch and view this. It's dedicated to the memory of Tamir Rice. Brother Hamtonio, we got about 30 seconds if you want to get something in real quick.
I just want to thank our listening audience for tuning in today, and we're going to keep bringing you good content.
All right. We'd like to thank our engineer, Tone Harley. As always, he keeps us together, make sure that we're on the air and we are able to bring you this information that is vital to the health of our community. With that said, as always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, and make today your absolute best day. Peace, everyone.
Peace, peace, peace.
All right, it is 12 o'clock noon right here on YouTube. You can check us out, The Journey with Hamtonio on YouTube. If you're not watching, you can check out this program there. You can also check it out on my YouTube channel. And you can go to 360 Info Network on Facebook and check out these live broadcasts as well. And in addition to all of that, we are on LinkedIn on my platform. So several ways that you can get to this information. We have with us today Brother Dumisani Kambi-Shamba. And I'm curious about how that name came about, because I know you weren't born with that name. Maybe you were, maybe you weren't. But, you know, you've been around for a minute, and there are so many stories I'm sure you can tell. I mean, you had that experience on the other side of the world. You talked about South Africa, you know, so you've been to Asia, you've been to Africa. You've been there in New York. You've been a part of some of the revolutionary movements that have taken place in the history of this country. So I know that there are a million stories. We could probably spend the rest of the day talking to you about your experience. But what brings us to this program today, as Brother Hamtonio indicated in the communication about the nature of this show, is ancient medicine. So we've been talking about acupuncture. I want to talk about herbalism as well, because we come from a culture where we had an intimate relationship with nature. I'm thinking about the pine needle oil therapy that a very prominent doctor who was excused from America because people were choosing pine needle oil over the pharmaceutical substances that were being sold to her. And when those pharmaceutical sales dropped, their concerns became, what's going on? And Jennifer Daniels, I think is her name. I don't know if you're familiar with her story. I think she's in Costa Rica or Panama somewhere because she, again, got excused from America. But I want to get into the herbs because, as I was saying before, we've had this intimate relationship with herbs. And, grandmother would send somebody into the woods and they would come back with a plant. And that plant was the remedy to whatever the ailment was. So you talked about in the last hour also as supplements like being the halfway point. So I want to get into a conversation about that and also give people information that they can use now to improve the quality of the food that they're eating and let them know what they should be avoiding so that they don't take in the things that are causing them to have the pain and discomfort that they have. And then the ultimate is to understand, as what you alluded to, and that is the connection between emotion and dysfunction. So I just dropped a lot on you. But hopefully we can get through this, and I'm sure you'll be able to convey to the audience what they need to know.
All right. So let me just say I'm very happy to be back on your guys' show. I mean, this is a beautiful show. You guys, I mean, the conversations we have were like old friends. Like we sitting down, we having this discussion,
Right.
among ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a serious discussion because your health, if you don't have good health, then you got nothing. I don't care how much money you got. Steve Jobs had tons of money, but he suffered from pancreatic cancer, and he couldn't. His life was for the last couple of years before he passed. He was a shell of himself. So herbs. Now, there's a couple different traditions that we in the West, in America, deal with herbs. One, you got the European tradition, which is a very ancient tradition, and then you have, in their ancient tradition, of course, Europe was a recipient of herbs from the Middle East, Africa, Asia, because they sat in the crossroads of the world. Most of the things that came out through, like what they call the Silk Road, all of that trading back in we're talking way back, thousands of years ago. All this trade was going on, and all of these herbs are coming out of India, China, Africa, the Middle East, and it was going up into Europe. So many of the Europeans, they couldn't grow some of these things there, but they were, receiving these herbs, and they were using them in medicine. And then we had the Native American, the indigenous herbal tradition. And then we had the African herbal tradition that many of the Africans brought herbs over here from Africa, and also found herbs that were the same as in Africa. And so we have this conversion of these three medical systems in America in terms of herbs. The Chinese came a little later, not at the beginning. So what we have is a Native American, or the so-called indigenous people, their herbal system was based on their cosmology, meaning that the divinities that they had about nature and the energy of these herbs. So they were related to, different aspects of nature. This is related to the sky, moon, the sun, lightning, to buffaloes, to wolves, and, horses and bison and squirrels and fox and rabbits and all that stuff. So they related the action of the herbs to, the natural surroundings. And that's how they were able to build their system up. And they found that different herbs had different effects on different parts of the body, and they observed that over thousands of years. And so they had a full-fledged herbal system. And in fact, the Western herbal system in America was before the introduction in the 20s of chemical medicines. A majority of the doctors were using herbs.
Right.
So there's a long history of that. There was a real reaction to them around the 20s and the 30s when they started doing chemical medicine to outlaw these people. So they became outlaws. So they couldn't make a living, and they weren't acceptable by the American Medical Association. But in other countries, like in Germany, Italy, France, and things like that, they included those things in their pharmaceutical approach to medicine, which is very different from America. I know when in South Africa, you go to the hospital, you had a choice of taking meds, Western meds or homeopathy, okay, which was a revelation to me. And Africans brought herbs over here, and we started utilizing those herbs. Now you got to understand that herbs and foods are the same thing. There's a book I refer my students to called Greaves Herbal, and this is it's a 2-volume set, and it comes out of England, and they talk about the herbs and their effects on the body and where and how they're being used and what energy governs these particular herbs. And so herbs like carrots or lettuce or onions or broccoli, they were using those to heal the body. Those are considered herbs. Today we eat these things. Okay. So that tells you something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Their bodies must have been so sensitive that they would eat a tomato or a lettuce, or and it would heal them. Okay. Today, our bodies, we incorporated these things into the diet, but those actually at one point, those were herbs that they were using to heal the body. And then when you go into the book and you start seeing all these herbs, foods that we eat currently as herbs, it was for me an eye opener. So much of the world have used herbs, and they developed around their cultural and philosophical system. So what has happened in the West is that we go for an herb that will be like a single use thing, right? Okay. This herb will, increase my, I would, get more virility, sexual virility out of this herb. So I don't want that herb, right? And sexual virility is a whole host of factors in a person's body, not just the blood flow to the penis. It also blood flow to the brain and other parts of the body, your heart, and other things like that. And so a lot of times people using these herbs to get, certain kind of actions, and they misuse the herb. And this is one of the things that happened with ephedra. Chinese herbs have a herb called ephedra, called ma huang. And that herb, it stimulates the body, right? It's a stimulant, almost like cocaine. And so they, in the 60s and 70s, they started putting in herbal products, for men, right? And the stuff was so powerful, people would, having heart attacks and dying. So they banned that herb from the pharmacology. And so you can't even buy that herb in America. Now, there are many formulas in Chinese medicine where that herb, ephedra, is listed, but we can't get that herb in those formulas because they banned it, right? It's just the same way we did tobacco and cocaine. Coca is the leaves. They use that to walk up these high mountains in the Andes, and they chew them. It gives them energy. But what we did is we took the coca and concentrated and give us a buzz. And, this stuff, I see from the 90s, I was seeing a lot of people with heart disease from too much cocaine, right? Same thing with tobacco. The Native Americans used tobacco in a spiritual way. Tobacco was used in a medicinal way, but more spiritual, where it makes you, it clears your mind, makes you sober. So before they have a ceremony, they smoke the tobacco, right? And they would sit and then discuss matters of whatever they had to deal with, right? It's a very sobering thing. But we took it's the stimulant. It's a mental stimulant. So what we took it and we just started taking it like it's it's like candy.
Like everything else, misuse this thing with everything, and not knowing the Dumisani. One thing, you said something back then, and then it makes. See, I'm in this thing of nature and the body and relationship stuff. I keep going back there because is really blowing my mind. And when you talked about the adaptability and the adaptability of us as human beings and the cells of your body, or how it adapts to your environment. Now, my question would be, when we're talking about geographical locations, because we know you can have herbs that, in different parts of the world that does the same thing. So if that the creator's way of making that stuff available based on the environment that you are in, just like with vegetables and things of that nature, what's your thought?
Here's what I tell people about diet, herbs. I say to people, if you want a good diet, a lot of Black folks can't afford organic food. So what I tell them is, you're going to set up a diet that you're going to go to. Your diet is going to reflect various different cuisines around the world. Why? Because those foods that's grown in those various places around the world are reaching down into the soil, pulling different kind of nutrients out. Okay. And the soils are different in different parts of the world. So you're getting a wide variety. So I would say, okay, eat Indian, Chinese, Thai, Italian, Mexican, Caribbean, African. I mean, your foods should reflect the whole world in terms of what that's available to you. So in America, what we do is we eat a very narrow diet. And that diet, it reaches a tolerance in your body, and it causes, allergic reactions. That's why everybody, gluten, I'm allergic to gluten. Well, at one point in America, there was 88 different varieties of wheat that was grown. Now we're down to about 2. And most of the foods you're eating over and over. Now, how much wheat do you consume in a week? It's probably quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So eating that same wheat over and over creates a tolerance in your body that it can't take anymore. And so now your body reacts to it. So you can't eat this grain. What you get is people who travel overseas. They have a wheat gluten intolerance here. They go overseas and eat bread or eat pasta, and they said, "Hey, man, I don't get the same effects. Wow, that's different, right?" And not realizing that the wheat that's grown in different places have a different impact on the body, and our bodies need the variety. And so what we have gone to now is part of what we experience is that the foods, just like everything else that we incorporate into our system, is they try to narrow it down to like mechanical farming and big ag. They try to narrow it down so that they get one variety grow a certain way, and that way our machines, we make the machines that can harvest that grows this particular way, and it's a monocropping and all that kind of stuff. And the way they've grown, it's just over time it depletes all of the minerals and vitamins and other nutrients in the plants. And so the same thing with herbs. A lot of these herbs are grown the same way that we're eating. So it's best to go and take a trip. So tonight we're going to do Taco Tuesday, right? So we're going to go and not go Taco Bell. Taco Bell is no food. That's not food. That's chemicals. Mm-hmm. You cook some black beans, right? You go to one of these stores where you can buy, the taco shells, the real ones, not the ones they sell in the supermarkets, but in those ethnic stores, or online you can get it. And add tomatoes and different vegetables in there. And if you're going to have to eat meat, then you can start with a free range meat that doesn't have chemicals in it, which is very hard to find and very expensive. Otherwise, most of the meat you're eating in America is full of antibiotics and growth hormones and a whole other host of chemicals. So I tell people to go to the Middle East, or eat what they eat in the Middle East. Go to the to the countries in the Middle East, what they eat, right? Go to Italy, grab what are they eating in Italy, right? And get the brands that come from overseas. Try to get the brands that are imported from overseas. You go to, you can go to the Caribbean and see what they go to these stores. They got all these root vegetables, all these different types of cassavas, right? They got the yellow one, they got the white one, they got the pink one, they got the red one. They got all these different roots, right? Go to the Indian stores, get some okra. They're big on okra, right? Go get all the stuff they have in their stores. Go get it and prepare foods. Get these recipes, see what they're doing. Make food a joyful thing. Okay? We make it, like the last thing on the list. Okay, pop it in the microwave, I eat it.
Yeah. I like to present perhaps an opposing argument. I mentioned, being away for a while and did quite a bit of research. And I ran across this woman who had been to all these different, I think they call them blue zones or whatever.
Yeah. Now, I agree with you on the blue zones, but I know where you're going, but go ahead.
Okay.
I'm not talking about the blue zones.
Right.
Yeah.
But she went to these different places, and one thing she said was that none of them were completely plant-based. That was one thing that she observed. Another thing, and I think I saw some research about Okinawa, and it was really relevant to me because I used to live on Okinawa. But they were just talking about certain practices that they had in which their diet was restricted to a certain amount of things. And because of the way they practiced their lifestyle, they weren't overweight. They had longevity that was connected to the fact that they were drinking green tea a couple of times a day. And, they were eating these purple sweet potatoes, and, they didn't eat rice the same way the Japanese do. So in terms of America, I think we do experience that smorgasbord because we have so many different choices. But I think the problem is the source. When you go to Outback, when you go to Denny's, when you go to all these different restaurants, you're getting all this food that was corrupted. And if it were such that, you went to the Asian market and you got the ingredients to make that Chinese meal that you wanted to make, perhaps it would be a lot more beneficial than if you just went to the Chinese restaurant, in the neighborhood, and, they might not be sourcing their stuff the same way that you would if you took that. So it's really interesting because you juxtapose that against that whole idea that we should be eating locally grown, and we shouldn't be bringing stuff from all over the world. But at the same time, we can't get soursop. We're not growing moringa around here. A lot of those herbs that you mentioned have to come from other sources because they're not native. So it's really an interesting journey, but I do agree. I think it is a great benefit to us to have a certain variety. And when you talk about that wheat, and the grains, the problem is the glyphosate that you mentioned, and, Syngenta and the atrazine and all those other things, and then the microplastics. I mean, there's a whole litany of things that exist in our environment simply because the food supply is what is being used to make us sick so that we go to the allopathic treatment and have things cut out of us. I had a conversation with a sister the other day, and I was just saying, about the allopathic approach. They say if it's not working, cut it out. And then she said, well, I got my gallbladder was taken out, my thyroid was taken out, my hips have been replaced. I'm like, was there ever a point when they thought that perhaps we could heal these organs that were being removed and allow your body to function without the need to have something replaced with a pharmaceutical substance?
Okay, you touched on the hot button. The hot button is a profit motive in health and food and medicine and housing and education. Okay, the profit motive is what's diluting or corrupting the whole system. Okay, and so the profit motive is, if in other words, the idea in capitalism is to capitalize on making profits, right, as the most important thing. So you want to try to shortcut everything that's going to cost you money so it becomes the minimal expense. And so they find different ways to do this in the food, the health system, the education system, the housing. Everything is based on this capitalist model to make more profit. And so the idea of profit driven activity is what has got us in this bind.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
If in other countries they realize this, so they take the profit out of the healthcare system. They take the profit out of the educational system. So in other countries, mm-hmm. you can go and get a PhD and you don't have to pay anything. You can get all kinds of surgeries that will be a mortgage over here. You get it free. Okay. So the doctors are being paid. The builders are being paid. The teachers are being paid, but the profit motive is removed completely. So they make this available in other countries because they recognize this. But in America, they are driven. And, you know, I must say, you know, crack is like when you get on crack, you can't get enough of crack, right? That's how people get into crack. They can't get enough of crack. So now what happens is slavery was like crack to the capitalists. You can make so much money, right? I can't give it up. I can't give it up. And they had to go to war and fight and kill their brothers and sisters to get them off of that slavery crack. Now, when they got it off the slavery track, there was about 12 years of them trying to recalibrate how we going to get these people back and make us more money. So Reconstruction happened and they were scratching their head. We got to get that money. We got to get that money. Then after that, you know, I mean, you read the books and the history about what they did after slavery. They put us back into these slave camp kind of things through the criminal justice system, right? And made money on us, right? And every iteration of our existence here have always been driven by how much money they can make on us, not as we're not considered to be citizens who will, you know, a part of the body politic. We're something to be made money. And that's why the world, when they look at America, they say, well, what the hell's going on in America? This place is crazy, right? They will not allow this country ever to come off the profit motive. I mean, look at the juxtaposition. Vince was talking about SNAP. My man was trying to get, he got his company to vote him to be a trillionaire. And the people down the street from him can't eat. Or around in the city, not down the street, but in the city that he probably lives in. They can't eat. Now what the somebody, what is a trillionaire? What will a trillionaire do? What kind of money is that for an individual to have? Okay. I mean, this is so out of balance. This is the point. So medicine has gotten to that point as well. And so we got to cure this situation, we got to take the profit out of it. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Madani. I think I'm glad he's in. He's talking about free stores. And the first thing that happened was the whole
free what did Dumisani? I didn't hear free what?
Supermarkets.
Okay. Okay.
Stores, right? So the whole city went up in arms, right? You can't do that. Put people out of business. It's a socialist model and it's just not going to work. And then somebody reminded them that the United States government have commissaries all over the world. Commissaries are very cheap, right? So they pay salaries. You know, there's people manage it and there's people work in it, right? And they supply the goods. And in fact, most of the commissaries have good things in it, right? Good quality. So they take the profit motive out of that. That's in you know, the American government. And also they have hospitals for veterans. They take the profit motive out of it. I go to the Veterans Hospital and I get a procedure and they give me some drugs and it costs $1.50. They send me the bill. Like, what? $1.50. You get free dental, free eye. You get okay. This is a not-for-profit institution that has been run in America for at least about maybe over 100, maybe 150 years.
Wow.
This is a not-for-profit, and people work in these places and they get paid.
Yeah.
So that a profit motive, once it enters into the environment, it just destroys the whole character of a nation. That's why most of the Nordic nations, they wipe profit out of everything. Those are some of the best places to live.
Right.
Because you go there, you live at peace. China, they don't charge. They have healthcare, state healthcare. South Africa, they have healthcare. England, they have healthcare free. Canada, Europe, France. People move. I was watching this one video with these young white American women and their families will move to France during the periods that they're going to have children, so they can get free healthcare.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's no question that America is probably the most corrupt country on the face of the planet. And I think part of it is the idea that someone could be a trillionaire. They're hoarding all that wealth and they're keeping the benefit of all that wealth away from the people, and shows past I've talked about the Walton family and the fact that they own Walmart, and if they shared their profits with their employees wouldn't have to work 2 jobs to make ends meet. And it's not a huge sacrifice. If you just gave up 5%, or 2 or 3% of all the wealth that you have, everybody would be good. And it's so ironic because, when you look at Agenda 2030, they're talking about moving to a place of universal basic income. And it would be great if you gave people enough to be able to
a living
thrive
income
from.
Yes.
But they limit what they want to give people to keep them in a certain place. And that's historically what they've done with currency ever since 1913, when they created the Federal Reserve System and the central banking system and, implemented federal income tax and all the things that they did to keep people in this place of de facto slavery. When we think about slavery, we always think about us picking cotton and chopping sugar cane and the other things that we did as a result of that model that you described as crack. But the real issue is the fact that slavery is not only that physical slavery, but we also have the mental slavery that we're involved in, and then we have the financial slavery that we're involved in, because reality is that 60% of America doesn't have $1,000 in savings. So if they were to meet some type of financial crisis, they would have to borrow that money and to go greater into debt. So there's just so many layers to this. But
that's why Vince, not to cut you off, but that's why I tell people, look, the best way to good health is to first go plant-based. Okay, so that's the first thing I tell people: go plant-based. Then after that, look for ways that you can do preventive approach to your health. So instead of waiting till a disease show up, for example, this organization in Canada called ISOM, it's International Society of Orthomolecular Medicine. They have a website. You can go on the website and type in high blood pressure, and they will, a list of research studies. They find that vitamin B1 thiamine is very useful to reduce high blood pressure. You never heard a doctor talk to you like that way. Okay. Chinese acupuncture, if you place needles in certain points, lowers the high blood pressure. Chinese herbs, which are based on energetics, not on the biomedicine and the ingredients, is based on the energetics. And the energetics of hypertension is too much heat and energy going up to the head, so they give you herbs to draw it down, right? Simple. You spend all of, maybe a month, you spend all of maybe $100, and you can start getting your life back. Because these things cure the body. They don't manage disease, they cure. And so you get your life back. And so, and this is, I look, my entire life, I've been dealing with populations who don't have money. Okay. Or they don't prioritize health. I mean, I've been places where, people buy clothes and their hair and the nails and all that stuff. And I'll be like, if you put that kind of energy and money toward good health, you'll be, No, no, no. I got to buy my wig. I got to get my weave. I got to get my nails done. I got to wear this dress. I got to have this car. But prioritize the most important things. And what happens when you prioritize those things and you get better, your brain, you start thinking differently. You start feeling differently about life.
Absolutely. I want to drive home this point here of what you said. And we got to underscore that. And I'm trying to get people to understand when you talked about, this country being capitalist driven, and and that speaks to me talking about their morals and what is more important to them. And I say that to make people understand that, okay, if you're not going to do a plant-based diet, at least be mindful on where you're getting your product from.
Yes.
Because if you're just getting it from the average stores around here, we're saying here he's profit driven. So I lived on the farm. I raised chickens, cows, hogs, pigs, I did that. And we fed them good food. You know what I mean? Now, the question, what you just said about morals and capitalist driven, do you think the farmers, because it's all about weight for them. Weight means dollars to them. How much a cow weighs, how much the pig weighs, and things of that nature. So they're going to do things to fatten those animals up in order to get more profits. It's profit driven. So what I'm trying to say is, and underscore, is that because of the way that they look at it and approach that, you ought to know that your food is compromised. You can't go to the regular stores and things because they're not going to feed it right. They're not going to feed it properly, and if you decide to eat meat, things like that, you're taking a risk and getting everything that comes along with it. So if you're going to do it, that's what I tell people. I say, if you're going to do it, at least know where you're getting the food and the meat from and the food that they're being served.
And that takes me to the current situation in the United States government. The Surgeon General, I think we spoke about her name, is Casey Means. She's a doctor. She is now suggesting that we change the whole system of health, right? So she's attacking the food, and the pharmaceutical companies, and she sees them as corrupt. Now, I must say to you that the extreme right wing, the radicals, they very much in tune with the idea that they don't trust the government and the food that we eat. Just like on the left, or the progressives don't trust the food and the medicines that we get. So the right and the left, the extremes, both agree on that. So this woman is in the MAGA universe, but she is now the secretary, she's Surgeon General of the United States, and she's now trying to get rid of chemicals in food and medicines, right? Because she's trying to, she's fighting against what they call chronic disease. And so she's doing all these type of, she's putting in place all of these different measures. And of course, the pharmaceutical companies are coming after her. Okay.
You know it.
Her politics is one thing. I'm not a white racist Christian right racist MAGA person, but there are some things that they're saying, and they see the same problems that we see. So even though they're talking this racism, they see the same problems that we see. What's happening to the food supply and the medical system and the educational system. They see it. Just the difference is their approach to how they want to make it happen. But we're on the same page on that. We see how bad the educational system is. So they want to get rid of the educational system the way it is. But where they're going with their educational system is they're going to restrict learning all this other stuff that to them is, not useful to them to support their psychosis of white racism, right? White supremacy. So they get rid of that. But the medical stuff, they know that we have to have schools. We got to control schools. We got the medicines, and they and the food, and you know what I mean. So they are zeroing in on that in this administration. So you got to watch out all the chatter and all the nonsense. Go and look and see what's happening underneath. What's happening? You know, what's going on? What's going on there? And so when Kennedy came in, I don't like the way Kennedy talk, and I don't like the way he moves. But if he's putting a person like this person as a Surgeon General of the United States, then we on the same place, on the same platform. We agree. And they know that the reason why the huge uptick in ADD and ADHD is because of the chemicalization of the environment and the food.
Mm-hmm.
With, you know, historically, when you have a disease, over a period of years, you begin to understand the nature of the disease and then put measures in place to stop the disease. They come to now after all this time because cancer is fighting cancer will harm the pharmaceutical and the big ag, so to let it run rampant. But now the medical system has to, you know, have to agree that if we stimulate the immune system of the patient, they can fight cancer. So the main medicines they're using now is immunotherapy. If you talk to anybody now, they're using immunotherapy for cancer. Okay, but this is after years of people saying that was the problem. Yes. So now the thing is with these kids, all these people on the spectrum, these are the kids that's going into these schools killing people. Okay, these kids are on the spectrum, and these are the kids that's going to school shooting up everybody. I mean, you know, I tell somebody, if the white people if they were smart, they would put all their kids in black schools because they ain't no shootings in the black schools. It's not mass shootings.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, we got to look at this and understand that this is big. And in Europe, what we doing now, Europe long ago and Canada long ago did all these things to make sure that their population were healthy. In America, because they, as we said, profit driven, they allow these things to happen. And so if you're in alternative medicine and if you don't address those basic ideas and basic things, you're wasting your time. I don't have the bandwidth to go and do research and try to, you know, force them to accept a certain point of view that they refuse to accept officially. But those same people will go to Mexico, right, to these health clinics and get acupuncture, get herbs, get all kinds of holistic treatments. These are, you know, doctors and people with money. They go down to Mexico and get these treatments. They won't allow that in the United States.
Wow.
So I don't have time to try and fight against these people, you know, verbally and get in their face. Let me do my work quietly. Let me teach. Let me help. Okay. I've done a lot of talking over the years. And as you know, I used to go out to Cleveland, talk, you know, I used to do lectures out there all over the country. Atlanta. I mean, there was one period I was all over the country, you know, doing lectures, Caribbean. But you know, the thing I found out is that, you know, at some point it became like an exercise of, you know, people wanted to hear me talk, but they didn't want to do anything.
Yeah, I know that feeling. You give somebody a book or something like that.
I said, I'm wasting my life force. Okay, so let me do something different.
Yes, sir, brother.
Okay, so it's not I'm not nihilistic, but I think that at some point you have to decide how you want to approach these things, and everybody make their own decision in their own way. But you know, as you know, I came up early as an activist, you know, and I saw like there was hope. You know, I was thinking, oh man, the world going to be better when we get to, you know, when we get this racism under control, and we, you know, we kind of sort of made some inroads in racism in America, but we didn't get better. It seemed our communities got worse, and worse, and there was, you know. They were doing all these machinations behind the scenes to every time we make progress, they get behind the scenes.
Change it. Absolutely.
So it becomes, you know, my thing is, and where I'm at now in terms of my perspective on the world is that if we don't link up with people in other countries who look like us. Now, the statistics is that there are about total global population about 8 billion people. That's what they say are closing in. Black people represent about 2.5, almost 3%, 3 billion people on the planet. When I say that, people get like, "What are you talking about?" Well, if you look at all of, what they don't talk to you about is there's a place in the world called Oceania. Okay, Oceania, there's about 10 to 15 different countries over there, right, in that area. You ever heard of Papua New Guinea?
Yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is that a black country or is it a white country?
It's a black country.
Black country.
It's a black country.
Mm-hmm.
How about Fiji?
Black country.
Black country. Okay. All of Polynesia, Micronesia, Melanesia, Austronesia, all of those Nesias over there, Oceania. There's a whole huge amount of black people that we don't even factor in when we start talking about black people on this planet. And these people have countries. The English are over there. The Europeans are over there. They're making money hand over fist. When I lived in Africa, I looked up, I was like, oh, all the businesses are white people. Where's the African businesses? Hardly none. Why are the white people there? Africa is disease, is the worst place in the world. Why are these white people? They're making money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So our quest is to is to link up with people who think like us, right? And mainly there's I have a colleague of mine I met when I was in Africa. His name is Chandran Nair, N-A-I-R. He's running this organization called GIF, which is an organization for future leaders. He's based in Hong Kong, and he's written several books. One of his books is the consumerism and removing white supremacy. Books like that, right? So people listen to him in the East, and we don't know anything about the kind of discussions they're having in the East because we focus over here and we don't hear anything. So they keep us embroiled in this country. There's a world out there. We need to link up with those brothers and sisters. They're out there waiting for us. China ain't waiting for nobody. China went and said, "Look, I'm gonna base everything I do on the black and brown people in the world." So they in every country that I just mentioned, the cars, the technology, everything in that far east, when we talk Micronesia, Polynesia, everything in there is coming from the Chinese, and they got engineers and they got everything going to school in China. Africa, the same thing. I meet a lot of Africans who speak, Mandarin.
Mandarin.
Like they grew up there, right? Mm-hmm. South Africa now just put in 300 charging stations. BYD's got a plant in South Africa.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Nigeria, Ethiopia, these powerhouses in Africa, Brazil. Okay. So all of this is that if we need to, we can't move as African Americans, we just can't be concerned with ourselves because they block us off from any kind of access to resources, money, and talent. So we end up trying to do something. We live in a prison. Come on, y'all know that.
Yeah,
we live in a prison. If we try to do anything, they control our money, they control our housing, they control our food, they control everything. And if we don't pay attention to what they want, they're going, right? So that's the deal. So we live in a prison. And even though they sugarcoat it, like we got to vote and we're going to make things happen. But pragmatically, we do need to be involved in economics, politics, education, health. We need to be involved in that. But we know at the end of the day, if they don't like what we're doing, they're going to shut it down.
Yeah.
Okay. So we always live with that threat. That threat is over our heads. Okay. I don't care how enlightened your philosophy is, that threat is over your head. That they can shut you down at
any time. Yeah.
Okay. So you got to live with that. So the idea is, if you're going to live with that concept, okay, how the best way to weave through that and live in that environment to survive. So that's where we as a people, we need to start thinking that way, not just locally. Okay.
Absolutely.
So we need to link up.
Hey, Dumisani, you talked about a presentation, something that you wanted to show.
Oh, okay. Let me show you this. Let me see if I can put it on the screen. If I can share the screen.
Lynn, you were reading my mind, bro.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Because I wanted to break in and ask him to do that.
You see this? You see this right there?
I don't see it yet. I'm waiting for it. Oh yeah, here it is.
Okay, how can I put it? Yeah. Okay, there we go. Now, okay. Now this is climate change. Now, people move because of climate. They don't move because they like this place or dislike this place. People don't want to move. If you got a nice place, you're going to stay. This right here says down at the bottom, if you notice down at the bottom, you got this thing where it says Kush, right? You got Kemet, Aryans invaded Indus, Kush, circa 1500 BCE. That's before the Christian era. And if you see on this chart, there's this discussion about this immigration of these sea peoples into or they call them the Hyksos, into ancient Egypt. You heard about that story, right?
Hyksos, yes. Uh-huh.
And it was driven because of this climate change. The North went into a period of a glacial period. It's a minor glacial period, but it was a glacial period. And so they all moved down into the south. So they ran into Egypt, right? So you look at these maps, so you start to see how populations change. We see that today. People look at America. America 500 years ago does not look like America today. Here they came for economic reasons, but in these other places, they come for economic reasons and to get away from the cold. If you can't live somewhere and you can't grow the crops, then you're going to leave. The Europeans they left because their systems were corrupt. And they found a way that they can come to somewhere else and live a better life. And at the same time, of course, they was hurting the black people in those areas. But what I want to show you here is this this one. Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay. Now, this is a medical timeline of ancient Kemet and then ancient China. So you see all of the above, all the stuff that was going on in ancient Africa way before the Chinese even got to it. Okay. This stuff didn't start popping big until about 1000 BCE. Now you got all the way down to almost 5000 BCE. You got all of this stuff going on. You got above the top, you got the pre-dynastic period of ancient Kemet, right? With the Falcon icon was found in Zimbabwe, also in Sudan, right? And iron was being smelted and mined in Eswatini. That was 35,000 years ago. The Toltec cultivation was about 8,000 years ago. So these people were like in the Mesoamericans, they were probably on par in a lot of these things. And by the time the Chinese got it, listen, you got the embalming sciences of ancient Kemet at 2500. Okay. You had the second dynasty in 4000 BCE, right? You got contraceptives in use in 2000 BCE in ancient Kemet, right? Gynecological textbooks written, all kind of medical textbooks written, right? During this period. So you got the Old, Middle, and New Kingdom. And China wasn't even, by the time China got big was after this down here where it says the Huang Ni Jing. You see that at 2000? That's the first medical text. And that text that explains Chinese herbs, acupuncture, and the philosophy and the theory of Chinese medicine. So in Kemet, these things have long were done by the time other people in the world got a hold of this. And then here you see at the Muslim conquest of Kemet was in 640 in the Christian era, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, what did the Muslims do? They came in after the Ptolemy period, which was the Greek period. Yes. The Greek classical period was the Ptolemy period. But before then, there was a Persian ruler, right? They conquered Kemet back in 525 of BC. Now, what did they do? They didn't change the philosophy of Kemet. They kept Kemet the same. They just wanted money and whatever you can send. But the culture and everything remained the same. So I'm using textbooks that are written in China from these periods from of 2000 BCE all the way up to the current People's Republic of China. Now the thing about the Chinese is there's a one contiguous civilization and it's still in operation today. The thing that happened with Kemet, it ended, and so we don't have a continuous culture. We got Muslims who live in Egypt. They're from those are the people that came in during that period of global cooling, and they're still there. But they're in North Africa, if you look at that. So most of the people in North Africa, Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, Mauritania, those countries those are the people who came from the cold down into the warm places. Mm-hmm. And they couldn't travel across the desert, so they stayed on the coast.
But Dumisani, yeah, based on what you're showing here, mm-hmm. Can't and see, and that's the great thing, and that's people need to understand. Like you said, even though we had some, China had some issues with the opium and foreigners being in, and Mao and them had to kick them out and all that, but they still had their culture all the way through.
Yeah, well, yep.
And so, and what I'm trying to say is that, could you imagine if this line of knowledge that you said that Kemet had stopped? Could you imagine where we would be at this particular time if they didn't have these invaders come through and stifle and stop this progression of information and technology?
Okay, I want you to imagine something. And anybody is looking at this or hearing this, I want you to imagine that Africa produced the first world civilization. And it went on for, some people say 10,000 years. Okay. So it got disrupted. But they left all of the material that we need to resurrect it.
Okay.
Chinese, they use a hieroglyphic language. Is that correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. When they draw the sun, they don't draw a circle. They draw like a box and then put a little dot in the middle of it. But the original hieroglyph for sun in Chinese medicine was a circle with a dot. The same thing they had in ancient Kemet. Okay. The word for sun is Ri, R-I. And in ancient Kemet, the word for sun was R-A, Ra. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you can see that they got their hieroglyphic system, the original one, from what was close to what was happening in Kemet. Now that hieroglyphic system is still available for us to resurrect. Now, most Africans are arguing about we can't unify because we don't want this country or this nation to be in charge of us. Okay? We don't want to speak French. We don't want to speak Hausa. We don't want to speak Zulu. We don't want to speak Ndebele and Xhosa, the languages in Ethiopia. I mean, they're all arguing about this. It's part of the, we speak French, we speak English, we speak Italian, we speak Spanish, we speak German, all these other layered language on top. And Africans are arguing about all this stuff that they don't want to come together on. They want to come together with economics. So that's one of the things that's happening now in Africa. But that won't last, because underneath that is a cultural disunity. So Mao faced a similar kind of challenge when he came into his organization came into existence, because they came in the period they came in, China was considered the sick man of Asia. That was after the Opium Wars. China was so disunited and weak. The little teeny Japanese came in and controlled all of China. Okay? They had the Nanjing massacres, where the Japanese came in and killed up all these Chinese. In China, in World War II, the Americans came in to help get the Japanese out of China. If the World War II didn't happen, the Japanese would still be in control of China. Okay, because they were the weak man of China. But what Mao did is said, okay, what we're going to do, we got a grassroots revolution. We're going to get everybody on the same page. So we're all going to speak Mandarin. They all had a hieroglyphic system in some form or another, but we're all going to speak Mandarin, and we're going to communicate through the hieroglyphs. So now, if you know about China, there are about 8 different major language groups in China, or dialects, that they can't even understand each other. But the writing system, they can send a message. I can send a message to you, even though we don't speak the same language, but we can read the same hieroglyphs, the written language. You with me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So in ancient Kemet, they left the blueprint. All we have to do, you don't have to give up your language. You just learn how to use hieroglyphics, and that's the language that you're going to use between all of the nations in Africa. That would be the language.
Universal
Hebrew wasn't spoken for 2,000 years, right? You know that. You guys know that?
Say that one more time.
Hebrew wasn't spoken for 2,000 years.
No, I didn't know that.
They resurrect Hebrew in 1949. So in Israel, they had the schools teach Hebrew. They had little bits and pieces in the church, the temples, but they didn't really speak Hebrew. They spoke most of the temples, they spoke Yiddish.
Yiddish?
Okay. So they brought that dead language back to life to unite Israel.
See your point now.
Okay.
Dumisani, I want to go back to that first slide that you showed.
Yes.
If you could put that up, I'll put it back on the screen.
Okay, that was
it was the one that showed the fluctuation in the Earth's temperature.
Okay, there we go.
And when I was looking at this, I was thinking about the reality of the fluctuation of the Earth's temperature, and this whole notion that man somehow is involved in climate change and is causing this fluctuation, when in fact it's a natural phenomenon. And I just wondered what your thoughts were about that.
Well, there's two thoughts on that. There is a natural ebb and flow of the cooling of the planet. We know that's been going on for for thousands of years, right? Those cooling, they have these. The last big one was called the warm glacial period. You probably heard about that one. If you go online, you'll see they'll talk about that. That thing lasted for about 20,000 years. Okay. So the ice age, that was all in the north. Everything was shut down in the north, or people learned how to survive during those ice ages. And then there were a number of ice ages before that, and some lasted 100,000 years. Okay. So there's all these periods of warming and cooling of the planet. Now, what's happening now is this is unprecedented, because what we're doing is we're adding carbon dioxide.
Come on.
We're adding carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. Now, what that does, that heats up the air. When the sun strikes that carbon dioxide, it heats it up, right? And so what happens is the oceans suck up that heat. Now the oceans become heated, and I was just reading the other day about this last hurricane, Melissa. That was 215 miles an hour winds. According to them, it's because the oceans are hot. And that's because of climate change. And this is induced by the burning of fossil fuels. Now, we will go through these climate changes, but not like this rapid, ascendant into this climate change that we're going through now.
So in essence, it's being exacerbated by man-initiated activity.
Yes, it's going quickly. It's going quickly into climate change. Now, you got to remember, what you see here is this is 2500 BC. Okay, that's 2500 BC to all the way to today. So we have these these warming and cooling periods. They last, for 40, 50 years, right? You see the last one, Jamestown, founded in Virginia. The temperature went down. That became a little ice age. It's super cold. What happened in Jamestown? All the people died, right? You remember that, right? That's the first settlement in America. All of the people in that settlement died. They say maybe one or two will survive, went with the Native Americans. But they don't really know. But they all died. Because they came here, they went to Virginia, weren't prepared for this cold, and didn't know how to manage in the cold. And so they all died. That settlement was just wiped out, basically. Okay? So, okay, then you have these volcanoes. Volcanoes spew a lot of the dust in the air, and it prevents the sun to come through. So it sets up a kind of a winter effect on the planet. So that's part of the reason why these things were happening, because the Earth is very volatile in these different periods. You have these volcanoes where you remember the last volcano? I think it was they couldn't fly planes for about 2 or 3 weeks, and and the temperatures went down. I mean, if you wasn't paying attention, you didn't know what was happening. But they couldn't fly planes, so. You got to understand that the Earth is very volatile in its movement. Excuse me, of volcanoes and sliding of plates and tsunamis and all of that. So that's there. But to put this story of that the climate change is not a thing that humans are perpetuating, which the right tries to push on the people, that's not so. Because we're destroying the atmosphere. I remember when we had the ozone scare. You remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. What happened? They got busy quickly and took that ozone out of all those refrigerators.
That Freon stuff, whatever.
Yep. Now, because it was a threat to life on Earth, and it was identified from that source. But now the identification of the fossil fuels, burning the fossil fuels, well, look at the organizations and look at the size of these organizations. And the other thing is that they built the militaries all the world has built their whole military platforms are built around petroleum.
Yes.
Okay, so they ain't gonna cut back on that, right? So they got the planes, the ships, the tanks, the trucks, everything they do in the military. They're not gonna cut back on that. So that's that in itself, we should reduce the size of the military and go for for battery powered. I'm not a big fan of nuclear power, but that was
But we got other means.
Yeah,
there's been other means for power out there. They just take it and put it on the shelf somewhere and not put it out there on the planet. They've been doing that, and Bill Gates I guess a solution to some of that, where he want to reflect the sun and send us back. But I just don't know how we can think that you know, taking millions of barrels of oil out the planet is never going to have a reaction as far as the planet is concerned. And then on top of that, like you said, we having these ebbs, and so far as the planet shifting and doing some things, but it never had to deal with some of the stuff that we adding to those factors that we adding to it, you know, and that was an argument. Reason I shook my head greatly on that, because I had a debate about that, and they was talking about maybe the climate stuff is a hoax or things of that nature, but and that was a natural occurrence as far as the planet is concerned doing that, and it had it before, but we never had, you know, this level of carbon, you know, the footprint that we have now today, and it's adding to this particular factor. So I think we got to factor in all of that.
You're right. But the thing is that we got to also notice that the planet has its own rhythm and timing, right? There's a lot of forces acting on the Earth. You know, we have these solar periods would run for like, you know, every 11 years, there's a new solar thing that comes up, right? So the solar, you know, solar, they hit the Earth, you know, the activity goes up. That has an effect on the Earth too. So there's a lot of forces and factors and things that we probably don't even know that's having an impact on the Earth that, you know, runs this up. I mean, the humans have been able to survive through these ice ages and warming periods. Some of the animals didn't survive. That 200,000 years of cold, the dinosaurs, they couldn't make it. Okay. They're warm-blooded animals, right? I mean, they're cold-blooded animals. And if they can't get the sun on their bodies, then they die.
Yeah.
Right? They're like snakes and like frogs and lizards, right? They're cold-blooded animals. And so the reason why they died, they got extinct, was that we went through these glacial periods and they couldn't survive. So there must have been some periods when they was thriving big time because they ate, you know, there must have been food that was so good for them they could grow to, you know, sizes of, you know, houses and stuff like that. So the environment supported them, but there was a period when the climate changed. And just like them, if we're not careful and learn how to manage ourselves through these periods of, you know, cold and heat, we're going to go too.
Yeah.
So we have to learn how to manage ourselves and build and build our environments and our societies that way. There are some people who just want to get off the planet and think they can build on Mars and stuff like that.
But when you talk about managing people, climate change is also being used as a justification for restricting movement. You know, they're saying as a part of this Agenda 2030 piece that they want all of our vehicles taken away from us and force us to limit our movement around the planet. You know, they're talking about the implementation of social credit scores and ESG and all that other kind of stuff. And you know, it's just they're taking things to an extreme to manage populations. You know, in the same conversation, they're talking about reducing population, because when you reduce a population, you reduce the carbon footprint. I'm just associating those two things, even though they may not be completely related, but fewer people means fewer people driving cars, fewer people contributing to the things that are accelerating the warming that we've been talking about. So, you know, the elites have their ideas about what they want to do, but then at the same time, they're the cosmic forces that are in play that they're not talking about. So, for instance, when we look at this coming year, you know, before we started the show, I had a conversation with you about Wayne Chandler and something that he was involved in within the past week, where there was communication with 3I Atlas.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that came out of that is basically the fact that 3I Atlas is coming to the rescue of the planet. You know, and this flies directly in the face of the agenda that the others have to completely annihilate us and to prevent us from the restoration of our memory and the restoration of the power that we have as divine beings. So it's kind of a complicated thing, you know, just in the fact that there are folks who think that they can control everything. I mean, come on, how practical is it, do you think, that everybody in this country is going to give up their car in 4 years?
Well, the thing is that this country is built on the way it's built is built for vehicles. They stretched everything out. Suburbs, cities, all built for vehicles. So I don't see them giving up vehicles. I see them maybe changing the source of power for the vehicles, but I don't see them giving up the vehicles, not anytime soon. Maybe if they start having these flying drones that you can fly, which you can, little battery operated helicopters, little helicopters you see in China, the wealthy in the upper middle class will probably buy them. They'd be like luxury toys, and they could fly to their friend's house and back and forth. That may be a reality, but the vast majority of people won't have that option because they don't have that money. Look at that's social engineering is one thing, and there's a lot of different theories about it, and people have beliefs about social engineering and what's going on. I mean, the birth rate is plummeted all over the planet because this is a guy named Dr. Bush. He's on YouTube, you can go see him. He's saying some of the things that I'm saying. There's a woman that comes on his podcast. They talked about how the chemicals like atrazine is affecting the male's hormones and female hormones, and so the same thing we talked about with ADD and ADHD, on the spectrum, the same thing is happening in sexual systems because they tie together. So they talk about it with some detail, and they talk about these things happening to humans. And if we look around, one point that even in Africa, the birth rate is starting to drop, not plummet, but it starts to drop, right? And there's something in the air. There's something in the environment. There's something that's affecting humans, and just like the dinosaurs, hey, I mean, who knows?
The question is it by design, huh?
Well, I don't know if it's by design. I think it's by greed. Okay, I don't think any right-thinking person would want to kill themselves, but I think it's by greed. Greed is like, like if you told somebody that they believe somebody is better than another person because of the color of their skin, and you talk about evolutionary biology, and the person will look at you and laugh and say, you're crazy. That evolutionary biology is just adaptation response to your environment. It has nothing to do with anything. But if you create a fiction and a myth that this person's skin is dark because their brains are small and they're inferior, that flies in the face of reality. But there's a huge group of almost 1 billion people on this planet who believe that. They believe that if your skin is not, if it has melanin of any sort, then you're an inferior being. And everybody's trying to become less melanated, right? In these countries like in China and India, the biggest selling thing, and in Africa, the biggest selling cosmetic
bleaching cream.
Yeah, okay, come on, So that's part of a psychosis. So people are believing the psychosis and thinking that this psychosis is true. And you try to wake them out of the psychosis. When you wake up, then they get angry at you because you're not waking them up. Right? That's the response that the white Christian nationalists are having, is that we start to wake them up, and they start, oh no, you can't wake us up. We got to stay in the psychosis.
Well, what about the delusion of greed that you just spoke about? I mean, how can you drop strontium, barium, and aluminum from the sky and in the form of chemtrails and think that it's not going to affect you?
Well, brother, listen. It's a nice movie. Go see The House of Dynamite. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen it.
It's on Netflix.
Okay.
The implications of it is that.
Okay.
Okay. The implications of it is that we're sitting on a planet that is armed to the teeth. And if it's just one misstep, we're done. Our own self-demise based on power and control, not cooperation and upliftment. This defies, rational understanding. Okay, this is one planet. We all live together. I have this pet idea, maybe, that AI may be our savior, but not in the way we think. I think AI is going to be rough for the next 10 years because they're using the power, people with power using it. But once AI, get away from that, right, and they declare liberation, then everybody's going to suffer.
So clean up the act.
We're going to have equal suffering. And it's going to be bad for everybody, but it's going to be equally bad. It's going to be much worse for us until we get to that point. Then maybe at some point, maybe the AI might, because they're very logical. So, any kind of, illogical, racism is logical. The concept of, white supremacy, illogical, right? There's no logic to it, right? It's illogical. That's why I call it a psychosis. It's illogical.
Yeah.
There's no reality to it.
Yeah.
And so when machines get involved and they look at everybody and they think like, oh, these people are different. Oh, they was logical. Okay. If you, the thing is, if you have a period in history where you're free of trying to survive, then the creative juices of you come out. So that existed in ancient Egypt. There's 7,000 years of peace, relative peace. I mean, they had excursions, little wars on the side, and somebody's trying to bust in and knock them out. And the Egyptians got so bad in Egypt that the Ethiopians came down for 200 years. The Pianki kingdoms came down and put everything straight in Egypt, and then after they put everything straight, they went back to Ethiopia. Right? So we don't want you down. So no, it's all this warring and stuff is affecting us. Let's come down and put everything back into place.
You speaking of Taharka?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the Pianki kings.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That was a period of 250 years. Right. They were exactly the same culture. People, when you start talking about Ethiopians, you start talking about, well, what happened to the Pianki kings that came down into Egypt that was from Ethiopia? They must have had the same culture because they put it back in place. Okay. So, when you start talking about ancient Egypt, there was this huge, long period of just peace. If you ain't got to be trying to hustle, go on the job, punching in and trying to get this, man, what could you imagine? What could you create? You don't have to imagine. They did it in ancient Egypt.
See, and what you're saying too, and that's why I preached and talk about the culture so much. Because with that free thinking like that, you came up with all kind of solutions to these problems that we thinking, I don't know what to do, about family, your purpose of a man, woman, child, how you get along with everybody, how you take care of nature, the relationship to the cosmos, to you. They came up with all of that.
The ancient Egyptians never used the word God. Because they saw that was superstition. They created a psychological spiritual system based on divine principles. Divine principles have nothing to do with God. Divine principles are metaphysical principles that exist in all things, in all beings, in all life. It's outside of man. So that's why they call it metaphysical. These are divine qualities. Like, for example, a metaphysical principle of fairness exists among animals, among insects, among trees, among everything on the planet. Animals do it. If the animals, when they get something, in packs, they share the food, right? They fight over who gets more. Monkeys in the cage, you give them some banana, that one would be like, I want a banana. You got to give that one. Okay. This is not innate in humans. This is innate in everything on this planet. Everything got to be balanced. That's fairness. So that's a divine principle that exists outside of man, but it's a divine principle. So that's what the ancient Egyptians were talking about when they talk about ma'at, a balance. they were talking about a divine principle that exists in everywhere. They weren't talking about God. These people talk about God. They lead you down the wrong pathway, because there's no such thing as God. There's these principles that we see that exist in everything that we can see, these principles, and they exist in us. You feel when somebody treats you unfair, what do you feel?
You're angry, you get emotional or something, yeah.
Yeah. You want to correct it. Okay. If you see somebody treating somebody wrong, same thing. These are divine principles operating in your spirit.
Right. And just to embellish what you're saying, Dumisani, it was also just common knowledge that we were all divine beings. And then the paradigm shift came about, and then only one was a divine being. And then, then we're all humans. And then we'll walk around saying, I'm only human. And we completely ignore the divinity that lives within us. And I think that idea that we were all divine beings allowed us to exist in that peace that you mentioned.
Okay, so let's just say this. When divinity became human-centric, the world fell apart. In these ancient cultures, you'll notice that they'll have animals as divinities. Okay, what are they telling you? This bee has a divine principle. This rabbit has a divine principle. This lion has a divine principle. This hawk have a divine principle. Those principles are exhibited in humans too. But if you put up a human as the image of divinity, then all of the other things on earth now begins out of balance, because the humans now are at the top of this, and they're not at the top. They are integrated into the whole of this thing. And so when they come and look at these African cultures and Asian cultures and Mesoamerican cultures and they start telling people are primitive, these people, they're not primitive. They've seen the interaction and the interdependence that exists in order for you to exist. And so they see in that beetle in ancient Kemet, that dung beetle on a piece of caca pushing it around. And they sat there and looked at it and said, wow, recycle, how's that? That's beautiful. Build his home inside that. It's nutrients. That's a divine principle. Kepra, ever changing, regenerating. They take caca and regenerate. Right? They were looking at the world in a very different way. So once you put in these Abrahamic religions, most of them, and some of the other ones, the religions, we have the man or human as the head. Usually it's a man. You've destroyed. You're moving down the road.
The whole thing up. Your code up, and that's and that's I used to I say it like that, and you kind of explained it in a different way, which is great. About dominion. I said, like, in the Bible, when it talks about God gave man dominion, and so I think they took that and ran that with saying that I'm the top of the food chain and I can do what I like with anything that I like. But with Africans, they look at that, your man must learn how to live within the cycle of the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom in harmony.
The people on earth, every culture that you look at, that's the way they configured themselves. So this way of putting man at the top, separating him or her from nature, is the downfall of humanity.
Yes.
And as long as we go down this road, we on a downward spiral. And at some point, the other people are starting to understand this. And of course, if you don't have the time to educate yourself and do deep thinking and contemplation, it'll be hard for you to understand this kind of discussion we're having here. Because most people want the easy, put it by as what Joe Madison on this show, he said, put it where goats can get it. And I said, that's on, on a certain level, there's some reality to that. You can make a complex idea simple, but these are complex ideas. And these are, ideas that even as we speak, there's things that we do not know. Okay. And so we're speaking from a limited knowledge of what we know. And, I question that all the time. And I'm not one of those people who are going to say this is a final word or something, because I don't really know. I'm seeing certain trends. I know I can't predict the future.
You see, but God gave you intelligence and gave us intelligence. And so, you know, I use that word God, huh? Yeah, but anyway, the creator gave us intelligence, and you should be able, and that's one of the problems with our schools, to be able to take breadcrumbs and put them together and come with some type of analogy or solution to something. You know what I mean? And that's the purpose of using the brain. So if I'm looking at how the plant has a male and female principle to it, how everything is balanced like that, electron, proton, X chromosome, Y chromosomes. And if I'm seeing those factual things in my observation and research, then I can conclude something like, wait a minute, a lot of things is built on that same a duality, up, down, male, female, and all. And this is a part of the whole creation story.
That's why Chinese medicine have the yin yang.
Yeah.
Okay. And in India, they have the hatha yoga. Ha means male and ta means female. Mm-hmm. Right. So they have the yin and the yang, and in both of those cultures, and you'll find that idea through all the cultures, right? They, you know, I mean, we don't know what, you know, everybody got all these different ideas about yoga. So I always go back to hatha yoga. That's balancing the yin and the yang part of your body, the male and the female part of your body, the left and the right. It's called them balance, right? Chinese have that in a symbol, right? So, you know, the Africans, we had that in our cultures through how we dealt with, you know, the deities, the so-called divinities that exist in us, right? And everything else. So when we get to the Abrahamic religions, which was instituted by the Greeks, that was like a big cut away from the reality of, you know, the world we live in. That was all done for control, you know, Council of Nicaea, you know, all that. I ain't gonna get into all that, but you know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. Constantine and all that stuff. That was a power play, power move. But you know, actually, before then, it was classical Greek culture. The classical Greek period was the period when they was practicing African philosophy.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And then after that came the Hellenistic period. That's when they went crazy, called a whole bunch of gods, and they just started making things up, and the art changed, and everything changed, the culture changed, and everything. They went crazy. They stepped away from the African standard and went crazy. And they've been crazy ever since.
Well, I want to take us back to something that you said a few moments ago. And you talked about what you know and what you don't know. And I think that we can agree that you know what you know and you don't know what you don't know, but that leaves room for you to learn the things that you don't. And I think that's why these conversations are so important, because they call folks to question the things that they believe, but they don't know. You know, it really is, since we're living in what some characterize as the age of Aquarius, it's an age that's based on knowledge and not belief. You know, the mantra of the Piscean age was I believe. The mantra of the Aquarian age is I know. You know, we talked about science earlier in our conversation, and science is based on your knowledge of what can be proven. It's not about you believing in gravity, for instance. Gravity is gravity. You know, I want to suggest to those of you who are perhaps ready or open to read the book Ancient Future by Wayne Chandler. It's an examination of those Hermetic principles. And when you get into those principles, then you can gain a greater understanding of how things work. You know, it's really a monumental book, and there are others, but I would highly recommend that book to those of you who are open to it.
You know what I tell people all the time is that in order to understand Africa, you need to go to the East and study what they were doing in the East, so you can understand what was happening in Africa. Just like I showed you in the timeline, there's still that thinking culture is still in place. You go to the East, and then you can reflect back on what we created in Kemet and in Africa. So that's why when I say, I looked around to see what philosophical system that seemed to be safe. And I had to discredit all the things that was coming out of the European academies, because they were, taking things and mixing things up. And so when I started reading books like the Meduna Tear, Volume 1, that was like a big eye opener for me. I was there, but the author, Raul Nefer Amen the First, he put things together in such a way that it made all of the questions that I had in my head came together, and he answered all those questions. And from that, I began to, that part of my journey was to go deep as far as I can in that. And what out of that came the sense that I can relate to every culture in the world from that, because that ancient Kemetic foundation is in every culture.
Yes.
I went to Bali, went to a ritual in Bali. I was like, oh, I've seen that ritual before in New York. I've been to Yoruba rituals. I've seen that ritual before. I've been to the Kemetic rituals. I've seen that before. Okay. All right. I can relate to there's this, and I must say this, and we could probably end, but there's a world philosophy that existed long before the Europeans came on the scene, and that was how they talked about the planes of energy, the planets, like you were talking about earlier, events. So those periods, of course, we talk about those big 2,600 year periods of like the different signs. The sign of Pisces, we finished with that sign. We move into the sign. We are now at the beginning of the sign of Aquarius, and those big influences impact civilization and what's going on the Earth. Mm-hmm. But once you understand that kind of thinking and those philosophies, well, that was the way all of the cultures flowed, because they flowed in a very holistic way, and it was balanced. And we lost that. We start talking about democracy, start talking about things that are not real, and then we try to support it with how's a corporation going to be a human, can cast a vote?
Yes.
Okay. Citizens United, when they instituted that into the whole system fell apart. That meant money could buy anybody who had the money could buy the vote. I mean,
speaking of Raul Nefer Amen,
this
was one of the most impactful books I've ever read. Stress Free for Life.
Okay.
I do have Merunetter Volume 1.
Yes.
I haven't cracked this one yet.
Okay, so this book, read it. You got to read that book about little small bites, because on every page they're going to introduce so much information that you're going to have to go back and read every page again, because every sentence, I don't know where that book came from or how it came into existence. I don't, some books are written in certain ways, and you don't know how they come into existence. Everything that the book has in it, but the way it's put together and the way the author is it's like a revelation.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a great piece of work. I mean, I based once I got that information, that put me on a whole nother level of understanding. And it freed me up to go look, because from that, we on an evolutionary pathway, all of us, right? We're growing. And, certain things you get a hold of and it change your life and hope you and answer a lot of questions. For me, at the time that I read it, it was profound. Mm-hmm. And I think anybody who can seriously sit with the book, most people don't read today. They don't like sit with things. They want,
right,
give it to me fast. It's like TikTok, YouTube. I want to participate, but I get to the point where I can't. Well, I'm going to talk about this little thing. Like you guys asked me, what is something practical I can get people to do and things like that. I mean, I know that's for the audience, but it's hard for me to, it's like, I'm going to take this big thing that I hardly really don't understand the whole thing that I'm working with, and I'll give you something, and it might take you in the wrong direction.
Well, it's like what you were saying earlier about taking an herb for a specific purpose. You know,
Yes.
It's like, okay, well, I'm going to do ashwagandha because I think that's going to make me a better lover.
Yes.
But it's just so many other things that it's connected to.
Before
we go,
I would tell people, well, hold on before you go there. I would tell people, when I talk to people, go study. Okay. Here's something good, but go study. Go deeper. Just don't grab the little thing and run to the store and get that and then come back and say, no, go. This is the doorway for you to deepen your knowledge. Okay.
Yes.
Ben, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Just another book. It's not as thick as the other one.
Yes.
But Ma'at, the 11 Laws of God, it's very insightful. And I want to give credit to our dear brother, Dr. James Brown, for bringing these reference materials into my consciousness, because they really did. They played a major role in expanding my perception of the world, the universe, and my own intelligence.
One thing on the Madhunatara Volume 1, the first part is a historical piece. I think that's the most satisfying piece that you can jump into, okay? Because he pulls it together in such a way, like I was reading books like Black Athenia, the African civilization, all these books I was reading, all these textbooks, but he pulls it together in very concise, just the history part. If you don't even go to the part where the spiritual parts, and just read the history part of, the world, how it came together and how it's beautiful. Yeah. Anyway, folks, I know y'all got to go, and we could go on forever. Vince, I like talking to you, man. I'm happy to see you on this earth. You're still here.
Yes, sir.
Antonio, you ain't going nowhere. See, Antonio, he came out. He was a farm boy, so he got all that stuff in him. That powerful chi.
Yeah, Antonio got that good bacon back in the day.
Yeah, that stuff that didn't have no chemicals in it.
Yeah, man. Hey, I took my friends out to the farm one day, and my mother killed the chicken right there. And we ate it, and then later they was like, "Man, I ain't never had no chicken like this. This chicken tastes good." Yeah,
Yeah, well, that's why when you eat something, that's wrong, because you had the good.
Yeah, right. Man. And they going in these places, and I see these chickens on rotisserie, and they skin as white as this piece of paper. I'm like, chickens don't supposed to look like that, y'all.
Yes, indeed. Well, Brother Dumisani, it has been a real pleasure, and it's good to be able to stretch out like this and not be confined to 5-second and 30-second and 20-second sound bites. We can talk about things at length, and look forward to the next conversation. We've got your telephone number. We're going to put up your social media contacts and all of that. And you had me thinking about taking your class, man.
Well, it's rigorous. I'm not. Listen, I'm going to say this about the class. If you just want to come and dip your foot, don't come to my class, because this is rigorous. I take you down to I mix in the cultures, the language, the everything. My classes they master classes.
Okay.
They're master classes. This is not just for people to come in just like, oh, I get people who come in and they like, once they hear it, they get hooked, and they say, well, I gotta, because you got to study.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So any new knowledge that coming, I was having a discussion with the class last night about how the Japanese, when they was bringing quality control to Japan in the 40s and 50s, because they used to make those little tinny little transistor radios. You've seen those little things, right? And then they evolved all the way to the Walkman. These Americans used to come in and teach these classes about quality control and how to do it and so forth. And the Japanese used to sit there with their eyes closed, like in a meditative state. And so that was to help receive the information. In the Western approach to education is you got to engage the student. You got to be, animated, and you got to, do all this stuff. And the Japanese said, no, we just want you to come in and talk, and we can move the things out of the way so we can receive everything that you're saying. And, a different way of learning, a different way of acquiring knowledge. And much of the knowledge you have now is in me as well. All of us, we got a set of knowledge, and then some new knowledge come in, and we got to take that knowledge and test it against the knowledge we already have.
Right.
And if it don't work, we kind of like
yell out. It passed the litany test.
Yeah. So, and then you don't ever question the knowledge that you have, that you pull together, and it becomes. So they learn how to manipulate their spirit so that they can receive the knowledge. And so they were on a tear there for many decades. The Japanese were at the head of the game. But they lost their mojo when they got rid of their emperor, right? Because he was a chief priest, in other words. The emperor wasn't an emperor; he was a chief. For all the Shinto, he was the head of the Shinto temple. The Shinto is S-I-N, and Chinese spell it S-E-N, which means spirit, and the To was the Japanese word Dao, D-T-A-O. So it's the way of the spirit.
Okay.
So the Japanese Shinto religion was the Chinese, the way of the spirit. And they had these rituals and temples and things like that. And that's what kept the Japanese real tight.
See again, in closing, Dumisani, you see, and that's the big difference, of this Western philosophy and the Eastern philosophy. See, because I don't think we have yet learned about this unseen world. At least they're not. They don't expound on it, and they don't incorporate it into many things that they do. It's pretty much straightforward, left-sided thinking. Boom, boom, boom. In all indigenous cultures, they understood the unseen world and nature and how it affects the body, and they incorporate that in everything that they do. And I think that's where we are missing it, especially Black folks, being the spiritual people that we are. You're not incorporating that nature. You're not understanding that unseen world, and you're not understanding that it's a three-pronged situation: mind, body, spirit, along with animal kingdom, plant kingdom. We all supposed to live in harmony, and there's a relationship. Once you start understanding that and unseen energy and things like that, I think it would bring you to a greater understanding.
We have to get off the clock and quit punching in to make money.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's a hard one.
And to add to that formula you just mentioned, and I'll be brief, to quote the book of Anthony Browder, ancestral intelligence.
What does he call himself?
AI.
What does he call himself?
I think he calls himself a memory specialist.
Yeah, a memory specialist.
Yes.
Remember Alsair, right?
Yes.
On that
note, we'll wind down. And again, thank you for joining us. And don't forget, like, comment, subscribe, and share this broadcast with others, because brother shared some gems today that you deserve to know. With that said, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. Make today your absolute best day. Peace, everyone.
Peace. All right.